Welcome to the Cool Tools Show. I'm Mark Frauenfelder, Editor-in-Chief of Cool Tools, a website of tool recommendations written by our readers. You can find us at cool-tools.org. I'm joined by my co-host, Kevin Kelly, founder of Cool Tools. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, it's great to be here.
In each episode of the Cool Tools Show, Kevin and I talk to a guest about some of his or her favorite uncommon and uncommonly good tools they think others should know about. Our guest this week is Jordan Bunker. Jordan is a freelance engineer, designer, artist, and prop maker based out of Oakland, California. He's also a former Make magazine technical editor and a BattleBots robot builder. Hi, Jordan. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Mark?
Good. Thank you.
Yes, it's great to have you on, Jordan. We're looking forward to your 4 cool tools.
I'm looking forward to it as well.
So you are a master maker. You use lots of cool tools. I've watched your videos and stuff, so really excited to talk to you about them. Tell us about your first tool, about the Dicum Steel Blue Layout Fluid Spray.
Whoa.
So I work with metal a lot, and one of the things that's really vital when you're working with metal is being able to scribe clear lines on the surface that you're going to drill or cut. Traditionally, Dicum is a sort of layout fluid. There's lots of different companies that make layout fluid, but Dicum is kind of the go-to company for a lot of machinists and fabricators. And most people are really familiar with the sort of brush applicator. So there's a little brush, sort of like rubber cement glue. You know, the brush sits in the top of the lid, and kind of pull it out, and you wipe it onto your surface, and it dries and leaves a film so that you can scribe clear lines. But somebody showed me they make a spray. So you can actually just avoid the brush and just spray it directly onto the surface and let it dry. And it's a lot more convenient.
And is it like a spray can spray, or is it more like a mister where you kind of like a press a water-based thing that you mist with
It's pressurized, sort of like spray paint. So you just,
Okay.
Just like any aerosol spray. So
it comes in a can.
it does come in a can, yes. You have to actually be careful. I once had one of the downsides is if you leave the lid off and throw it in your toolbox, everything comes out blue. So
All right. And is it blue for a reason? Can you get black? And is there any advantage to one or the other?
I typically use blue or red. I think it's just easier to see things in blue and red. I'm not sure why those are the colors, to be honest. I've never seen it in black. But yeah, blue and red. I don't know if they make the spray in red as well. It kind of depends on what materials you're working with. If you're working with brass or something like that, you might want to choose one or over the other. So
Okay. All right. Yeah. So if you wanted to, you can still use the brush on, but this is a lot more convenient. Just take a can and spray it.
I think it is, personally, but that's just my preference.
Okay. So what's the second tool that you have for us?
The second tool is, most people don't think of it as a tool, but it's the McMaster-Carr Catalog, the physical copy. Most people who make things or fabricators are very familiar with McMaster-Carr. They're a company that carries all sorts of different hardware, thousands and thousands of things, different materials, different hardware that you might need, screws. They even sell bicycles. It's kind of crazy when you look through. And because of that, it's really useful to have an actual catalog that you can keep on your desk. Mine's actually doubled as a coffee table book just because I find it so useful. You can use their website to search for exactly what you need, but that often only solves the immediate problem that you have in mind right now. So having the actual catalog allows you to just kind of page through, and you'll find things that you didn't even know exist that might solve problems down the road. So if you encounter some strange problem, you're like, oh, that's right, I remember seeing something that fixes exactly this in the catalog.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things the website is good for is, drilling down like a specific thread size or caster of this dimension by this dimension. The web is pretty good for filtering through that. But you're right, if you wanted to browse and see what else was available, the web is horrible for that.
Oh, I totally agree.
So what does it look like inside the catalog? Is it color illustrations, line drawings? Describe it for me.
It's not color. Everything's in black and white, but there's a photo. It's sort of like the website. If you go on the website, they have those. I mean, they're actually beautiful illustrations. I'm not sure how exactly they're generating them. They look like kind of like they're photos that they've converted to line drawings, but everything's in black and white. It's kind of just like a paper version of what you expect online. They're kind of hard to get. At least they used to be. I've heard that back in the 70s, they used to send these things to everyone who ordered from McMaster back before the internet was around, because they didn't have any way of knowing what they sold. But as the internet kind of progressed, I think they probably were sending out way too many of these things. They come out with a new one, I think, every year. So they were probably just filling up people's mailboxes and stuff like that. And they're kind of heavy. It's a big book. I mean, bigger than a Bible for sure. So now they only send them to select customers, and I'm not sure what the selection process looks like. Probably if you order enough, they'll send you one, and you can technically request one, but I've never heard of anybody doing that. But you can find them on eBay all the time, like all over the place. And they usually, I mean, they think they run between $40 and $50. It depends on how new they are, but their stock really, for most of the stuff, you're going to find, an old one is perfectly fine. So.
Sure. Especially if you're just kind of, like you said, looking at it for inspiration and just to see what's out there that you didn't know existed before.
Exactly.
I actually see on eBay people selling them from 1991. I don't know whether that's just like someone who's collecting them or whether they're actually still useful.
It's funny. I think there are some people who collect them, and they take up a lot of space. But it's funny. I was telling a friend of mine that these things are actually, the old ones are kind of worth money now, and he's like, "Oh, really? My dad has all of his going back to 1960 something." It's like, well, you might want to check. They're selling for a bit now. So
yeah, there might be some historical interest in them too as well.
Okay.
So McMaster's is the place for like almost any conceivable piece of hardware. They've got it. And the other important thing, like Amazon, they were very early in like overnight delivery. At least in California and places that were urban, you could often get these things the next day, or at least at the most 2 days later. And so it was like having a hardware store right in your pocket.
Oh yeah, they're great. I mean, I rely on them a lot, just for like fast shipping alone.
Yeah. So it's a great resource, the website as well as the catalog, which I didn't realize was so expensive. But yeah, I wonder, it would seem to me that they would have to be able to sell it individually if people were willing to pay enough for one.
I would think so, but I've looked online and it doesn't look like they sell them. I'm not sure why.
They're they're like a secretive, kind of odd company, aren't they?
Yeah.
Really?
I think I've known one person who got like a tour, but they don't do tours.
Yeah, you can't go in. No one let you go in and look. Yeah.
Huh.
I know in Chicago, I used to live in Chicago, and you could order stuff and go pick it up. And it's kind of funny. They have like just a little tiny front office with one of their catalogs chained to the desk, and little terminals where you can place orders. But if you look behind the desk, you just see this massive warehouse. You can barely see the other side. It's like something out of a movie.
Okay, well, that's a great idea. I hadn't really considered having the catalog before, but I think you're absolutely right that browsing function would be very, very valuable.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
All right, well, tell us what's on your list, Jordan.
The next one is one that I recommend simply because it's low cost and it's safety equipment. In my fabrication jobs, I've often been cutting or grinding or welding. And if you're trying to do that in just jeans and a t-shirt, you're going to end up with little holes all over your shirt at the very least. So I like to wear a jumpsuit. And what I recommend people do is buy an Air Force jumpsuit. They're made of a abrasion and chemical and heat resistant material. Like I think it's called Nomex. But they're developed for use in the military, and you can get them for like $20 or $30.
Wow.
They're really not that expensive. And if you go to,
is it new or used?
You can buy them barely used. If you just visit a surplus store, I'm sure they have them there, but it's a lot cheaper than trying to like go on Amazon and buy. If you type in Nomex suit, you'll see they're kind of expensive, but you can hold a lighter right up to the sleeve and it doesn't even singe the thing. So it's a
wow.
full body jumpsuit. They make them in a variety of sizes because they have to fit anybody who might be recruited by the Air Force. So they're just a very cheap, very safe option for a sort of full body coverall.
And do you use it as a coverall, meaning that you put it over your street clothes, the clothes that you're wearing right now, and are they sized in that way?
Yes, I mean, they can be. I've never tried another size, to be honest, but mine I do wear over my clothes, and it's a light kind of breathable material, so it doesn't contribute too much to getting hot.
Uh-huh. And would you still wear, like if you're welding, would you still wear like a leather apron in front of that too?
It's probably a good idea, but if I'm doing a lot of welding, I'll throw a leather apron or jacket on. But I've done lots of little jobs where I'm just wearing the suit, and it doesn't burn the material, so sparks just kind of bounce off. I imagine that it would transmit the heat if you had a coal like land in your lap or something like that. But
Right.
yeah.
And so it's an Air Force jumpsuit versus, I don't know, military jumpsuit or Army jumpsuit. I don't know anything about the military. Are the Air Force the only ones who wear jumpsuits?
I'm not sure. I also know very little about the military. What you want to look for is aramid fabrics. So a lot of
Aramid?
aramid, it's ARAMID. It's kind of a
Okay.
class of fabrics or fibers that Kevlar is one of them. Nomex is another. They're kind of brand names, but they're specifically formulated to be temperature, chemical, and abrasion resistant. So a lot of times, if you search for them on eBay, you'll see the tag where they show the size, but you'll also see meta aramid or para aramid on there, and it kind of lists the materials in the suit. So
Okay. Wow. That's a great idea. I had no concept of that before.
Yeah, I mean, it's so inexpensive for having something like that, and just not getting your clothes dirty is like one of the nice things about it.
Or burning up. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the issue when
Yeah.
welding.
yeah, I can't tell you how many jeans I've put holes in the knees of, or shirts I spilled some kind of chemical on and it's stained forever. So it's just cheap insurance, really.
Yeah. Cool. The U.S. Air Force jumpsuit. And it seems like maybe eBay is the best place for that.
I think I bought mine at a surplus store a while back, but they recruits get out of the Air Force and they have no use for them, so they sell them on eBay, or they're all over the place. They made them by the thousands and thousands, and they're making new ones every year. So it's almost I recommend that people just find a size that fits and buy one. At least I have two of them, but one of them's been sitting in a closet because I haven't worn through the first one yet. I've probably been using it for 10 years.
Yeah. And do you know anything about the sizing? Just again, if you're trying to get it over clothes, do you have to kind of get a size larger?
I'm not sure. In that case, what you might want to do is just go to a military surplus store. Most cities have something like that, and just try them on.
Very cool. That's a really good one. So another one you have is a hot air station. Tell us what hot air station is and why someone would want hot air.
So if you're doing any sort of soldering, usually when people think of soldering, they think of a soldering iron. And that's great for what are called through-hole components. They have little leads that go through the holes in your board, and then you apply solder to the leads. Well, if you're doing anything surface mount where there are no holes in the board, you're just sticking a component right onto the surface. They can be sometimes very small, and getting your soldering iron right there is a little tricky. So a hot air station, what it does is it blows hot air out of the tip of this sort of wand, and it blows hot air directly onto your parts and kind of melts all of the solder right around the area where it's heating up. So that's really useful if you're doing very small surface mount parts. And a lot of times, if you go to look for a hot air station, they can be pretty expensive. A lot of them have lots of fancy bells and whistles, and you're paying $200 or $300 for these things. But there's a model, I think it's mostly manufactured in China, but it's less than $40. It's the 858D, and you'll see a bunch of different manufacturer names associated with it. But It doesn't really have any fancy options or anything like that. You can dial up the temperature and you can change the air pressure that it's, the force of the air blowing out. But it's great to have it on the bench, even if all you do is use it for heat shrink tubing, which is where mine gets most of its use.
But a lot of people just use a heat gun. Is it any different than a heat gun?
The heat gun takes a long time to heat up and often is just way too hot. So this thing is also great. This particular model, it detects when you put it back on its holder and it turns it off automatically. And so you pick it back up and it turns back on, and you put it back down and it turns off. So you're not sitting there with a blisteringly hot heat gun on your bench that might fall over and burn you. So I prefer it for that. It's also a lot more precise. The tips are a lot smaller, so you get a very directed hot air flow.
So you use it like for shrinking, heat shrink tubing, and for warming up things to be soldered,
or just for actual surface mount soldering. So
Okay.
yeah, you get solder paste, it's called, and you can it comes in a syringe and you can dab it onto your little pads and put your parts in place. And then you bring in your hot air gun and just kind of sweep it over the area until it heats up and the solder melts and everything gets soldered together.
And they call it a rework station.
Yeah, you'll hear that again, or a lot actually, when you're looking for hot air stations. I think rework typically is the term used for like repairing a lot of surface mount components. So if you're doing any rework, then you're kind of resoldering things or removing things from boards. So,
or desoldering them.
Desoldering. Actually, it's really useful for desoldering surface mount parts because your soldering iron tip only hits one pad, whereas a hot air can hit all of the pads around it. So you can kind of lift a chip up all together. So
cool. Okay, I get it. That's great. And this is kind of a more inexpensive version, kind of a probably made in China version.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does have that one key feature where it turns off when you set it down.
Right,
but,
right.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Skill Builder article column that you did for Make Magazine. You have archived all of those or made them easily available on your website, Hyrotechnics.
Yes. So I originally moved to San Francisco to work for Make Magazine as a technical editor. And one of the things that they wanted me to kind of exclusively write about was kind of just sharing all the random knowledge I've accrued over the years of different materials and processes and how to work with them. So the Skill Builder articles were kind of focused on some things that are very simple, like how to use hand files appropriately. Most people don't realize, there's two different techniques. There's the one where you kind of draw your file along parallel to the thing that you're filing, but there's also the draw filing where you turn it perpendicular and you kind of scrub it across the surface, and it results in a lot finer shavings, so you can smooth things out a lot better. But there's all sorts of little tips and tricks for how to work with acrylic, or I did a whole section on rivets, different types of rivets. I also went into kind of like how different technologies work. So like lasers, there's big gas tube lasers that you might be familiar with if you worked with a laser cutter before. But how do those laser pens work? How is it generating the light? Those sorts of things. So the Skill Builder series of articles was really just to kind of give people the groundwork, because a lot of times you'll buy files or something like that, but they don't come with an instruction manual. And if you try to look it up online, there's all sorts of information. It kind of just feels like drinking from the fire hose. So I was trying to provide a very simple way for people to kind of get their feet wet and kind of learn slowly about all the different ways to interact with materials and use the tools that they might have in their shop.
And so in the show notes, we'll have a link to your site, which then links to these articles. But they're just all different articles. Have you, or will you combine them into a book?
I don't know. I'd have to talk to Make about that. These were featured in the magazine. So if you have, if you've been a Make Magazine subscriber, you might have all of these in the Make magazines that you have on your shelf.
Yeah, and before we had Skill Builder, we called them Primer. I was actually the one that came up with the name Skill Builder because I thought it was better than Primer or Primer. I don't really know how to pronounce that word. We have there are other like introductory. We had one on welding and a bunch of other ones. And so when we link to your the ones you wrote, Jordan, I'll also try to like collect the other articles too that were part of this series under a different name.
Excellent. That would be great.
Yeah. So, Jordan, do you do videos at all?
I did used to do the weekend projects videos for when I was at Make. Currently, I have not really embarked on any video content as of late, but it's always been in the back of my mind that I should kind of pick that up.
You shot a documentary too, right?
I tried to shoot a couple documentaries, years ago. I think actually, Mark, I interviewed you for one of the documentaries.
Yeah, at the New York Maker Fair, I remember.
Exactly, yeah. And that one was called Remade, the Rebirth of the Maker Movement. Unfortunately, making a documentary is very hard. Filming a documentary is the easy part. The second part of turning it into an actual film is the hard part. So
yeah,
Yes.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, that's a very astute observation. It's sort of like writing is easy. Making a book actually is a lot more trouble.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the collection of that footage into some story that could be told was a little more difficult than our team anticipated. And as the years stretched out on, we kind of determined that it probably wasn't going to turn into a thing anytime soon. So that footage should be online on the Internet Archive. I'm talking with Jason Scott at the Internet Archive. We want to make sure that everybody has access to that footage. Some of our footage actually ended up in the documentary film Print the Legend. If you're familiar with that one on the 3D printing, they followed MakerBot.
Cool.
Kind of their story.
So, do you have a project that you're working on now that you wanted to share with listeners?
Right now, nothing public. Maybe in the future, if people want to follow what I'm doing, they can find me on Twitter or on my website. I'll post updates, but nothing that I'm ready to publicly share yet.
And who are you on Twitter? What's your handle?
I'm at TensorFlux.
Okay.
And I'm on Twitter and Instagram with that name. So.
Okay, great.
Jordan, this has been a pleasure talking to you.
It's really been great.
It's been a pleasure, mine as well.